Welcome to the next edition of Original Digital, which we're going to run on Media Village. I'm Corey Truffaletti, and I am here today with Carter Reese. Carter, say hi.
Hello.
Carter and I have met a few years ago, and he does a lot of things in the experiential activation space. But before I jump in on any kind of questions with you, Carter, why don't you just explain a little bit about Hatch and what you guys do?
Sure. First off, pleasure to be here. So stoked to be talking with you this morning, Corey. Hatch I am experiential. We've been in business since about 2012. I have two business partners who I've known since, as my kids say, the 19s, since 1999. I've been working together with two business partners, which I think is a interesting topic in itself to have a triad of business owners who all specialize in their unique verticals. I think is a spectacular way to run a small business. You definitely have to have a little bit of less ego as the president of the company. There is a captain of any team, but my two business partners are right there with me in every single element of business.
Sure.
One specializing in creative, one specializing in production, and myself taking on more of the sales and leadership roles. But we've Hatch Experiential, we've really done almost everything you can think of and then some. We started off with an amazing project with Mercedes-Benz and Mike D from the Beastie Boys. That was a month-long experience in downtown Los Angeles where we recreated a museum with 13 different artists that Mike D had curated. They flew him out to Los Angeles and we built out an experience. I think this is after I think we put our shingle up and like 2 weeks later, we're living in a downtown museum for 30 days, executing this project, and couldn't have been happier. I mean, it was like, this is exactly what we want to do, bringing concepts to life and allowing people to interact with it. And then just seeing those life moments take place where you're in a unique area, you're having a Santi Gold, Mike D performance, and there's only about 250 influencers, not influencers at that time, but VIPs and future influencers all just having a great time. It really told all three of us this is the path for us, which is experiential marketing and media.
Yep. And one of the things, like I've been in media buying a long time. I love experiential. I think it's probably one of the more overlooked elements of a media mix for a brand. Some brands, maybe at first they don't understand how it fits into the overall mix. For a lot of brands, you can easily figure out how it is a great tool to engage with your customers and your audience and the prospects. But just at a high level, when you're talking to a brand, what is it that gets them over the hump to say, this is something I'm interested in?
Great question. I think one of the things I'll point to is probably a little bit of what took place in the early 2020 was COVID. We all went into a sit back media digestion place where we all did this. And I think during that time, it really helped reinforce those brands on that tipping point of, do we do experiential? Do we do live or not? Do we just stay with the media side of things and the digital? I think it really allowed people to figure out communally getting together in a personable live space is so impactful for brands. I became such an evangelist post-COVID, but this is the way marketing should be done. Having been in the music industry back in a long, long time ago and seeing street teams from Loud Records, Wu-Tang. I won't bring up Bad Boy because they're in a bad spot right now.
Yeah, I'll go there.
But those, direct-to-consumer street teams really showed me how you can create a bond in a live sense. And then now bringing that to the forefront of where we are now today with Hatch, it is so pivotal, I think, for brands to be experiencing or having consumers and B2B plays experiencing your brand. It takes a little thought. You have to figure out how you want to present yourself in the live forum comparative to the digital space, which allows for lots of editing, allows for lots of color correction, and whoops, we didn't say the right message. Let's rewind that and re-edit it in the live sense. You put it out there and it's out there and people are experiencing it. I know that digital also has a tail and it will live on forever online, but before you put out a strategy, you have the opportunities of changing it. In the live sense, my goodness, you get such good actual like bonds. It's really tough to talk to a consumer and say, did that digital element really hit home with you? What kind of, what type of remembrance do you have?
Yeah.
And I think with the physical space, you get that. Now, you can't just do things for those emotionalities. You have to drive some type of ROI. Are you driving back to a unique URL that's being captured from a data point? Are you sending people to purchase? Are you driving them to retail? Are you sending out some type of coupon or BOGO situation where it's going to take them back to online experiences? Those have been really helpful.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, at Hatch, we love those scoreboards. We need to have that. Time spent was a fun ROI element for a while there. Doesn't really hit the mark so much when the CFOs are looking at the dollar spends in the live space and then what they're getting for it. And to
Yeah.
be able to attach real sales numbers, velocity and lift, it usually is a winning strategy there.
Yeah. And do you think it's fair to say for a brand that doing an experiential activation, the word authentic obviously comes to mind,
Mm.
but it's really interesting to me is the word control actually comes to mind too, even though I don't think anybody would think about it necessarily as an experiential term. But the fact that you're in an environment where you can literally sit in front of your customer and you can talk to them, you actually have more control. Now, it doesn't mean that things can't end up in a way that was unexpected, but you can control the environment, you can control the conversation, and hopefully get something that is authentic, is true, and hopefully more impactful out of it, right?
Great comment there. You definitely can control, and that's a little bit of the strategy element that Hatch kind of has moved into more. We really started off in hardcore production, moving into more curation, and now we've really developed our strategy side of things to help that control when you get on site,
Mhm.
working with the brands, the clients, and figuring out what elements you want to control and what messaging you want to bring out of your brand is pivotal. And authenticity of always is something as marketers will, it's always weird to say because it feels like it's an overdone term,
Yeah.
but it is truly the North Star that you have to rely upon, and bringing your brand's DNA out. Both those elements together, I think, is a good control thing to have. But you do want to leave a little bit of blurriness on the side so that each consumer can, realize it in their own way and maybe take it in a direction that maybe you and the brand didn't see, and becomes
Mhm.
kind of lightning in a bottle. And you're like, oh my God, this is great. We've now created some type of virality. That's even a word.
It is
And
now.
yeah, it will be for today. And that way that you do have some of the control, but it also has the ability to grow. And that's where you get that shareability opportunity of like, hey, come to this experience. I was just in the Venetian hotel. You got to go see these bears in the fountain that somebody put.
Hmm.
Whether or not that was going to be the calling card for something we did with Dead & Co., who knows? But that really was a fun element that got thrown in that all of a sudden became very viral, and people were now looking for this experience. And I don't think when we were first starting the project, that was part of the control element, but it became something really pivotal for people to follow. And
Yep.
that wow factor was kind of fun. And that's what we look for in all of our projects is like, how do we control the narrative? Where do we want to take these individuals? Give them something special they can share, and then let them go and let them kind of sit back and watch. I mean, not only do you get to control the emotionality, the content, but the brand also gets to learn. If you're there on site and you get to see the consumer's eyes and what they touch and what they go to and gravitate, hopefully that tells you a lot about your product or your service or whatever you're trying to push. And that's real-time feedback. That's gold.
Yeah, certainly. And you bring it up the activation you all did at the Venetian with Dead and Co. I had seen it. I had no idea you guys were behind it, but it was one of those things where I had gone to the show. I went through the whole activation. I thought it was done phenomenally well, so I'm not kissing your butt on this one.
Thank you,
But
brother.
how long does it take to create, to program, to craft something like that?
That was a big one. That was 22,000 square feet, 2-story ticketed immersive experience for Dead and Company due to the residency at the Sphere, which is by far one of the best venues to see a band in. I mean, the storytelling abilities of the Sphere is just next level. I think we're going to see more and more of those popping up. COSM here in Los Angeles and Dallas is a good example of that on a smaller level. Um, that I have to admit was a bit of a selfish play on my part. I saw Dead and Co was playing at the Sphere. I wanted tickets, as an event person buying tickets to things, you get a little spoiled. You're like, I gotta know somebody who can get me into this. And so I talked to a friend of mine who worked at Vibey, who was our client in the project in bringing that to life. And he was like, dude, you got to buy your tickets. And I'm like, come on, bro, like hook it up. And he's like, well, I can't hook you up with this RFP if you want to bid on this. And I've seen the Grateful Dead a few times, probably about 10 or 12 times, in Vegas a couple times, the Dust Bowl. And I was like, this is right in my wheelhouse. Like, as a music person, let's dive in. So it was really easy to kind of get wrapped around the background of the Grateful Dead and Dead Co. itself. And
Mhm.
then working with the band through Vibey, Red, who's on the Dead's management team. She's an amazing woman who's been working with the Dead Co. for years. We had the opportunity to really collaborate with them and figure out what elements we wanted to bring to life from their amazing catalog, their history, and some of their more iconic characters, the terrapins, skeletons, obviously the tie-dyes and what have you. And it just became an opportunity for us to just to pull every weird opportunity of immersiveness together in one location. There were some parameters around the merchandising. As
Sure.
you may have experienced on the ground floor, there was a significant amount of merch down there. But that was really what most people were going to the Denico experience for. But then they were able to go upstairs and experience the deep history of the photography,
Yeah.
all the recording elements, a small bar area, multiple museums from art from the band.
Yeah, the
It
video
was
room that was up there, the V-Dub bus that you could go sit in and take pictures and kind of experience that
Yeah,
again.
it was so much fun. I have to admit, it was a lot of long nights working in that Venetian hotel, Venetian mall, excuse me. But then we were there. I had been there for a volleyball tournament with my kids earlier, and the big fountain in front of our mall setup was just had a big love sign.
Hmm.
And I was like, it'd be pretty sweet if we didn't have access to that. But I was sitting there going, it'd be pretty sweet if we could throw the bears in there with that love symbol, with the fountain coming in. What an iconic picture and viral opportunity that would be. And the Venetian said yes. I mean, we were so pumped. And so we made, I think it was four 3D foam sculpted bears and multiple colors, dropped them into the fountain. We had to be there at 4 in the morning. Whole fountain got drained. We went in there with, special shoes so we wouldn't crack any tiles, and definitely had to be careful of the Venetian stuff. Placed all the bears in their configuration, filled the tank back up. It went live in the morning, and immediately there was a line of people just taking photographs and socializing the whole thing. It was pretty sweet.
Now, more importantly, where are those bears now, and why don't you have one behind you?
I did. I needed you to say that. The client wanted to keep those. That's something we deal with quite a bit, which is we come up with cool ideas, we make it to the budgetary best abilities, and then we always talk to our clients like, "Do you want to trash this afterwards?" They're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna throw it away." And I'm like, "Okay, let's take odds here to see who actually throws stuff away." And they
Right.
were like, "We're keeping the bears, we're keeping the skeletons, we're keeping this," and that's always makes us feel good. And also our sub vendors who help us with this,
Yeah.
it's always a little bit of a feather in the cap to have the client keep stuff afterwards. It makes you feel
Yeah.
good. Good
Yeah, there's
deed.
an emotional tie to it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. For brands that are thinking about doing experiential, they want to consider these kinds of activations. What are one or two pieces of advice you give them in advance to say, hey, think about this before you really dive in on it to make sure you do it right?
Well, I've one for sure. I was battling with a brand one time, and they were going to choose either do experiential event or do a billboard.
Hmm.
And so we were sending back and forth questions and answers and budgeting things out and coming up with a full strategy for them. I thought I was winning this piece of business, and I was feeling good as a sales guy. And I got the email saying, Carter, we appreciate all your work. We're gonna go in the other direction and go with this billboard. And I was like, really? You're gonna do a billboard over experiential? Like, this is so unique. And granted, this is probably 8, 9 years ago,
Yeah.
but he was like, listen, I send one email to this out of home group, they put it up, and we're done. If I
Mm,
hire you, I'm going to talk to you probably 3 to 4 times per day for the next 5 or 6 months to get this thing executed. And I'm like, I can understand like the level of involvement and how much work this puts on your plate, but the
yeah.
outcome I think is so much more significant in the way of impactfulness than a billboard you're maybe going by at 85 miles per hour here in Los Angeles. We drive a little fast, comparative to a live event that people get to stay at for almost 4 or 5 hours, where they get to maybe experience something they've never seen before. They get to have a life moment that they've never obviously had before, or maybe even better yet, they meet their significant other at our event and they can always
Mm,
talk about this for the rest of their lives. But the point was, there's a lot of work that goes into experiential. There's a lot of details, and it's live. And with live, amazing lifelong memories that stick with everybody who is on site because something so unique happened that it will never happen again. And I think that's the true element of experiential, is creating those life moments that stick with you forever that you talk about. And there's not a lot of brand moments. I do love my TV and I love my advertisers, but there's very few commercials that I'm going for the rest of my life are going to talk about. And I think what we create on the live event side, people talk about those for generations. Really, it gets passed on. I was at this show, I saw this, and it becomes so into your heart that you end up passing it on to your future generations, your kids, your friends, and you become an evangelist more so than any other marketing derivative. I do support my digital friends though.
Sure.
How do you give tales? How do you extend the event longer before and after? We have one pivotal moment potentially, or maybe it's a tour and you have multiples, but you got to have a build up. You got to have a little bit of tail. You got to have another build up, and you got to extend that conversation. And that place best is online.
Yeah.
So IRL, URL, that's where we meet. Hatch loves to pride ourselves that we live in that space. We're constantly streaming things. We're always broadcasting, multiple camera shoots, always creating content, working with our PR friends or digital friends to make sure that gets amplified across the world at that point.
Yeah. So I think I'll take away from that for a brand, you have to understand it is going to be more work up front, but the payoff and the outcome is probably a little bit more in line with what you're looking for. It's probably something that's going to maybe even exceed your expectations. Don't be afraid of the work. Don't be afraid to put the time and the effort into this thing. And also don't be afraid to find other ways, other channels to activate and extend and even measure or create accountability for the experiential. Because like you said, doing digital extensions and other things can really bring that accountability into experiential. It didn't exist before. And to me, being very, very in depth in the digital space for as long as I have been, I've always loved both digital out of home and experiential because I think that they're extremely complementary.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And with technology just advancing so quickly, it's getting very blurry between what is real and what is digital. And I find that extremely interesting. I'm very excited for the future and how just visualization of VR is coming into play, 3D holograms, 3D projection, kind of AI obviously is a big part of everyone's lives nowadays.
Yep.
And just kind of that crossroads. And that's the beauty part of experiential, is that we kind of don't get stale because we're always using the newest toys, tricks, and technology. Granted, it has to be live, but maybe not. Maybe there is a blurry moment. And so we use lots of tech on site, but there also is a law of diminishing returns on technology that you get too teched out. It turns off maybe some different consumer groups. Maybe some people's heads aren't good for quick movements. Yep. Or is this too complicated? And so you have to be really conscious of that when you're producing a live event, not to overproduce it with tech, having tangible items, but also giving everybody what they want a little bit in that space. Right. It's exciting. It's a great place to be right now. We're super pumped. We've been growing nicely, very modestly. We're excited for the next few years. It's looking very promising.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching it too, Carter. So thanks for taking some time out of your day.
Corey, man, this was awesome, dude. You're so good. You're such a good, presenter, interviewer. You're very comfortable. You make the others feel comfortable. I appreciate this, brother. Thank you.
Anytime. I appreciate it as well.
Cool.